Have you ever been accused of a serious crime, even though you didn't do it? If not, that's good. I had to deal with that situation. I always try to stay out of trouble and keep calm. But somehow, all the problems came crashing down on me at once. I'm Parker, and my wife Bonnie and I have been together for 5 interesting years. We met a week before Christmas when I was in high school. Back then, I just wanted to date as many girls as possible. Bonnie was different, though. She was a challenge I couldn't overcome. Looking back, I realize I didn't give up easily. I wish that's precisely what I had done. Instead, I persisted in my attempts to win her over throughout the remainder of my senior year. Graduation marked the start of my downfall. Despite my desire to get my instrument out as early as possible, everything turned out quite the opposite. Consequently, after a night out together, we discovered that she was pregnant 2 months later, which made us think about the available honeymoon options suitable for expectant mothers. My hopes of going to college had been postponed indefinitely. I've always been captivated by computer programming and delved into several college-level courses during my later years in high school. I possess a solid command of SQL and can effortlessly construct queries, views, functions, and stored procedures. Crafting triggers for intricate data scenarios is also within my skill set. Utilizing available tools and resources on the internet, I've honed my proficiency significantly. The beauty of it is that I can work from virtually anywhere with Wi-Fi, which in my case means I don't have to step out of my house. However, my current situation is somewhat complicated. Due to an altercation at a nightclub where I resorted to physical violence, I find myself under house arrest for the next 10 months. Despite not being a physically imposing individual, this incident marked the first altercation I've had since grade school, and it was more of an ambush than a fair fight. Luckily, I managed to avoid felony charges. After Bonnie gave birth to our son Adam, we experienced a tranquil 6 months. I held a decently paying programming job, working in an office alongside about a dozen other programmers. Bonnie and I engaged in adult activities despite being only 20 and rather inexperienced in many aspects of life. Bonnie insists she took her birth control pills, yet here we are in the doctor's office staring at a sonogram revealing 3 sets of tiny hands and feet. Things went smoothly. Bevan came first, then Connie, and finally Danny joined us. I'm thinking about getting sterilized before we have more kids. Dealing with a stubborn toddler who's in the tough, terrible twos stage, feeling left out compared to his complaining sisters, is tiring. So, one Saturday night, we asked Bonnie's parents to babysit. Bonnie and I had dinner at a chain restaurant and then found a nightclub with a live band. It was our first time at a bar since we turned 21. The place was crowded, which made talking and dancing difficult. So we went to a different nightclub that didn't have a live band, but had a jukebox and dance floor where about 40 people were enjoying themselves. After a few dances and some drinks, we found ourselves seated near 3 other couples, all strangers. The men chatted about sports while the women discussed who knows what. Some other men approached our table and invited the ladies to dance. 2 agreed, while 2 declined. I observed Bonnie joining a man on the dance floor. After a couple of lively dances, she returned. Later, a different man asked her to dance. She glanced at me, and I nodded my approval. They danced together for a few fast and slow songs, and it appeared there was no inappropriate behavior on the dance floor. I excused myself to visit the restroom, and upon my return, Bonnie was nowhere to be found. Despite my efforts to search, she remained elusive. I observed a man with his right hand positioned between Bonnie's legs, outside her jeans, vigorously touching her. She seemed to be reciprocating with her hands around his neck, while his left hand ventured under her blouse, and their faces were in close proximity. Without hesitation, I intervened by delivering a forceful kick to the side of his leg, just below the knee, causing him to cry out in pain. I then forcefully pressed his blonde locks against the concrete block building, causing him to collapse. Subsequent kicks thwarted any further misconduct on his part. It seemed my final kick had a significant impact, possibly affecting his reproductive organs. Security intervened shortly after. Turning to Bonnie, I demanded, how she managed to return home remains a mystery to me. Throughout the night, I pondered whether intoxication led to such inappropriate behavior. Our group found ourselves confined to a holding cell, 6 of us in total. After my parents posted bail for me and brought me home, Bonnie repeatedly apologized. However, I eventually confronted her, stating, "Apologies don't clarify the motives behind your actions. When you're ready to explain that, I'll be all ears. But until then, please refrain from speaking." Despite my request, no explanation was ever provided. Sexual intimacy declined as the tension in the household persisted. Bonnie made efforts to avoid conflicts. Despite our financial constraints limiting us to a novice lawyer, I doubted that splurging on a top-tier attorney would have yielded better results. I received a sentence of 11 months under house arrest. I had to stay home unless it was a medical emergency or the ambulance or police needed to take me somewhere. Bonnie found it hard having me around all the time. She started spending time with our neighbors over coffee to deal with it, but I found comfort in being with my family. Luckily, my boss let me join meetings online so I could keep up with work. Then, less than a month later, another problem hit our marriage. Bonnie told me straight up, "I can't just sit at home every night while you're stuck here." Since she was broke before, she started rethinking things. She met someone at the supermarket and is going on a date with him on Friday night. I had intended to remain composed and speak sensibly, but my reaction was quite different. Bonnie, gripped by fear, sought refuge in our bedroom and secured the door. I explicitly conveyed that our marriage would be terminated if she persisted. Upon her retreat to the bedroom, I promptly contacted both sets of parents, who promptly agreed to come over. Bonnie's parents, Roger and Edith, and mine share striking similarities. My mother, Julie, and Edith both embody a nurturing Aunt Bee persona. While Julie occasionally opts for trousers, Edith exclusively dons floor-length dresses, which conceal any potential extra appendages. My father, Mark, and Roger bear resemblance too, sporting fashionable beards and receding hairlines. I recounted my understanding of Bonnie's grievances to the assembled group. Despite Edith's efforts to coax her out, the situation escalated beyond control. Bonnie got upset and ended the night suddenly. She gave me a scary warning saying, "If you ever want to see your grandchildren again, stay out of my personal life." Our parents showed sympathy and said goodbye with comforting hugs. Bonnie went back to the bedroom and locked the door, leaving me to sleep on the couch again. She wasn't home much for the rest of the week, and I didn't know where she was. I had to take care of our 4 loving but needy pets. Mark arranged for a visit from a lawyer about divorce, making me feel stuck with few choices. Unless Bonnie was found to be a bad mom, I'd have to pay child support for nearly 18 years, plus support for her and other expenses. Then, on Friday evening, Bonnie made a disrespectful comment. I wasn't sure if she'd come back home that night. I pleaded with Bonnie one final time not to leave. Despite my pleas, she drove away, signaling the end of our marriage. Around 1 a.m. My phone rang, but I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. Upon hearing the message tone, I decided to listen. "Mr. Douglas, this is Abby from University Hospital. Your wife Bonnie has been admitted. She's not in danger, but she needs surgery tomorrow. I wanted to let you know. My number is..." Part of me felt like it was fair, but I couldn't leave the house. Did he hurt her? Was there a car accident? Was he driving? Sleep eluded me as I pondered these questions. The hungry cries of the 3 little hens only added to my exhaustion, and I was drained by the time the roosters announced dawn. At 8 a.m., the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Approaching the front door, I noticed a sleek sedan parked behind my car. The man standing at the door displayed his badge and asked, "Is Parker Douglas here?" That would be me. "How can I assist you, detective? Isn't it?" "Yes, I'm John. Do you know your wife is in the hospital?" "Yes, I do. Is that everything?" "No. Where were you around midnight last night?" "If you checked, you'd see I'm wearing an ankle monitor," I said, pointing at it. "Oh, sorry. I should have looked into it." "Do you know anyone who might wish harm upon your wife?" "No one immediately comes to mind. The hospital left a message about her being there. That's all I know. What happened?" "I must say, Parker, your demeanor is rather perplexing. Care to elaborate?" "She decided to end our marriage last night and went on a date. I somewhat hope her companion assaulted her severely." His expression turned grave. "Nothing of that sort, at least not as far as I know. As she was leaving a motel room, she was physically attacked. There's no indication of sexual assault from her. Her face is badly bruised, but the most severe damage is to her left hand. Each finger was broken with a hammer. They left a message on her face with a black marker. Choices have consequences." Despite the grim news, I found myself smiling. I had no involvement whatsoever in this. "I can't help you, John. If you'll excuse me, I hear children who need feeding again." I considered reaching out to Bonnie's parents to inform them of what I knew, but ultimately I decided Bonnie should handle that conversation herself. The day was filled with the usual chaos of caring for the children, feeding, bathing, changing diapers, and repeat. I barely had time to spare for 10 minutes of television, and my programming projects were piling up, indicating another late night of coding ahead. Just past 4 p.m., my phone rang, displaying Bonnie's name on the caller ID. I chose to let it go to voicemail. "Parker, I'm not sure if you know, but I was attacked last night. Today, they operated on my left hand." All my fingers and thumb are broken and my hand is in a cast. Can you get someone to bring me some clothes for when I come home tomorrow? How are my kids? Please call me. It feels like I'm her caregiver. Forget it. Put on your fancy clothes and leave. At dinner, my favorite detective came to my door. Mr. Douglas, I have a search warrant for your residence. John, no need to be so formal. Please come in. Would you like something to drink? No, thank you. I remained silent as they seized my computers and engaged in thorough searching. John's assistants exchanged looks indicating they found nothing. John, what's happening? There's been a related assault. It appears to be a case of sexual retaliation. We've connected this individual to your wife. His genitals were mutilated, with the same message written on his face in black marker. I winced. Mutilated? That must be painful. Similar to Bonnie's assault, I had no involvement in this whatsoever. Well, it seems like karma's caught up with him. Best of luck with your investigation. Oh, and since you're confiscating my phone, could you please call my dad for me? John dialed Mark's number. I asked him if he could lend me a laptop and get me a cheap disposable phone. My parents arrived with dinner, and I briefed them on what I knew. My mom voiced what I was already thinking. She deserves it. Bonnie continued to send additional messages, portraying herself as the victim of a random incident, rather than expressing any remorse for her decision to end the marriage. I chose not to engage with her voicemails or texts. On Sunday around noon, she was dropped off at our house by a car. The children were thrilled to see her. I made an effort to stay in other parts of the house for the rest of the day. Despite her struggles with the children, I ignored her requests for assistance. If you're unable to handle something, then retreat to the bedroom and I'll take care of it. Parker, please don't act this way. We're still married. I'll be in this cast for at least 10 weeks. I need your cooperation. I disregarded her and entered my office space. With headphones on and music blocking out my surroundings, I managed to accomplish some work. I caught the scent of dinner cooking and sensed a tap on my shoulder. Bonnie passed me a note. The kids need baths. I can't risk getting my cast wet. I'll be in the bedroom. When John returned my computers and phone, he informed me that my browser history and cell phone activity were of no use to them. It was satisfying to be able to say, I told you so. Bonnie inquired John about the recovery of her rings. She had been wearing my wedding band along with her maternal grandmother's wedding band. Apparently, the attackers removed them before injuring her fingers. John replied that no rings had been found or turned in. We existed in a stalemate. Bonnie would try to control me, but I stayed strong until she went into the bedroom and closed the door. She kept trying every day to change my mind, but I stayed determined. Then, one Thursday, Bonnie came out of the bedroom dressed in a way to attract attention while I was talking to Edith on the phone. She told me she had plans for another date and wasn't sure if she'd be back that night. I was shocked. I realized I needed to get a divorce quickly. I couldn't bear being cheated on. Even though I'd miss my kids, I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. Edith said she'd take the kids to their doctor's appointment on Friday and was upset about what Bonnie did. She offered support, but I was too overwhelmed to think clearly. Thankfully, having my children around gave me some hope. I was fast asleep when my phone rang suddenly. I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. Later, when I heard the notification sound, I checked the message. It was from Mary at the University Hospital, saying Bonnie had been admitted. I wondered what was going on. Was this like our first encounter? I doubted it was the same person. Injuries like hers don't heal that quickly. Maybe someone had hurt her. It was weird to admit, but part of me almost wished she wouldn't make it because of her injuries. I know it's twisted, but my life is upside down right now. After having a sip of whiskey and falling back asleep, I stopped worrying about Bonnie. With a cup of coffee in hand, I greeted John as he came to the front door. John, good to see you again. What's the latest? Here's your copy of the search warrant. Same pattern. Assaulted leaving the motel, broken fingers, and another message on her face. Another victim with mutilated privates. You're elusive, but we're determined to apprehend you. Give it your best shot, John, but I'm just as clueless as you are. Same message. On the man, yes, on Bonnie. Another message. You're not catching on quickly. Now it's going to be her feet. You talked about her broken fingers. Is it her right hand this time? Yes, that's right. She won't be able to do much for a while. Too bad for her. Don't count on me to help her. Before they took away my phones, I called my dad to ask if I could borrow his laptop again. Additionally, I mentioned needing another disposable phone. Fortunately, all my work is stored in the cloud. I had the foresight to create backups of everything, transfer them onto thumb drives, and entrust them to my dad for safekeeping. On Friday around 4 p.m., I received a call from Bonnie. Well, not exactly Bonnie herself, but someone calling on her behalf. She sounded distressed, fretting about how she would manage this and that. She kept on complaining, oblivious to the fact that I couldn't care less. Perhaps her parents will provide her with shelter. During dinner, Julie stopped by and assisted with looking after the children. When my phone rang, she noticed it was Bonnie, answered and activated the speakerphone. "Parker, you need to assist me." "Bonnie, this is Julie. Don't expect Parker or any of his acquaintances to aid someone like you. I've told you to refrain from meddling in my personal affairs. Put Parker on the line." She offered me the phone, but I declined, so she ended the call. On Sunday, Bonnie attempted to contact me again. I let it go to voicemail. "Parker, if I return home, will you support me? Please call." I didn't call back. I have no knowledge of her whereabouts. John returned my electronics a few days earlier than before, with the same warning that they still suspect my involvement. Monday morning, I was surprised by an unexpected visitor. "Edith, what brings you here?" "I'm here to assist you with the children." "What about Bonnie? What about her? Isn't she staying with you?" "No. She asked us to mind our own business, so we've stopped answering her calls. We haven't seen her since the night she instructed us to stay out of her life. I believe she's staying with one of her friends, possibly someone from her wedding party. They've called on Bonnie's behalf several times, but we've informed them that we no longer consider her our daughter. In that case, please come in. Would you like some coffee? Black, please. Where are my babies?" Edith stayed out of my way and spent the entire day looking after the children. When they were asleep, she took care of the laundry and did some general cleaning. Initially, I thought it was just for one day, but she has returned every day since. Some days, Roger joins her. I managed to catch up on my work projects and even had time for a guilt-free nap. I haven't received any communication from Bonnie, and Edith confirms she hasn't either. My attorney suggested it was an opportune moment to initiate divorce proceedings, considering that Bonnie has effectively abandoned the children. With Edith staying for dinner, I can structure my day as if I were still married. The previously chaotic days have now settled into a tranquil rhythm. However, this newfound calmness allows ample time for me to contemplate my situation with Bonnie and nurture my resentment. My mother visits several times a week, too. The grandparents have a much better relationship than Bonnie and I ever did. When the kids have a medical appointment, one of the grandparents usually takes them. Once the paperwork was prepared, Bonnie was served. Her voicemails were filled with explicit language and threats. I chose not to delete them, thinking they might offer the court a clearer understanding of Bonnie's behavior. Given my limited mobility, the lawyers' meetings took place in my front yard. I hoped this would bring an added layer of shame for Bonnie. They were determined to argue for Bonnie's custody rights and to secure child support from me. We made similar claims against Bonnie, asserting that she needed to find employment to contribute to child support. Considering her abilities, it seemed unlikely she could handle this without earning money from escorting. The first court hearing didn't go well for Bonnie. My lawyer showed that I'd been the only one supporting the kids for the past 8 weeks. They argued back, saying Bonnie couldn't use her hands because of her injuries. When asked why I wasn't helping her, my lawyer showed statements from Bonnie's 2 lovers who had hurt themselves. I said I didn't agree with Bonnie having affairs. Bonnie and her lawyers talked for a while. Their last move was showing a paper with a warning message to Bonnie. My lawyer said the note might have been made up just to make things dramatic. Bonnie's lawyers couldn't prove where the note came from. I was not involved in its creation. Now, we await further proceedings. The court requested additional documentation from Bonnie regarding her abandonment of the children. According to my attorney, this development bodes well for our case. After the left-hand cast was removed, Bonnie entered the house. She found all her belongings crammed into the laundry room, which infuriated her. My lawyer advised me to let her back in, as not doing so would create a negative impression. Despite my hope that the children would reject Bonnie, they didn't. While holding Connie, she attempted a different approach. "Parker, what do I need to do to move past this? I still love you, and I believe you love me too. I'm sorry for hurting you. I was immature, but I've grown a lot in the past 3 months. Bonnie, you're mistaken. I no longer love you. The sooner I can remove you from my life, the better. I'm not leaving. You'll still have to deal with me when you visit your children." I grew increasingly frustrated, prompting me to head to my office. Our upcoming court date loomed nearer. Bonnie was asleep on the couch, and we continued to avoid each other almost constantly, similar to before when she had only one functional hand. I took care of matters once Bonnie was confined to her room. When our case was called, Bonnie appeared pleased to see her parents present, although she hadn't seen them since the argument preceding her first court appearance. She waved at them, but they ignored her. Her demeanor shifted when my attorney summoned Edith to the stand. Edith, may I address you as such? Yes. Bonnie is your daughter? We're cutting ties with her. Why? She's been very promiscuous and isn't fit to raise my grandchildren. Parker can take care of them just fine. While Bonnie was unable to do anything, she was being very promiscuous, while Parker was at home taking care of the kids. She's left them behind. I won't let my precious grandchildren think that being promiscuous is okay. But isn't it true that Parker is currently stuck at home because he did something bad? Yes, but that's because he hurt someone he thought was hurting Bonnie. Turns out she was being promiscuous that night too. No further questions, Your Honor. Bonnie's attorney wisely chose not to cross-examine. Celebratory high fives ensued when I was granted custody, and Bonnie was mandated to provide child support. Alimony wasn't necessary as I was covering all housing expenses. When my lawyer presented the recorded threatening voicemails, the judge ruled that the initial 3 months of visitation must be supervised. I had anticipated feeling elated as a liberated man, but instead it was a mix of melancholy and a touch of relief. Not much changed back at the house. Edith visited every day, and she and Julie took charge of my romantic life. I made it clear that finding a romantic partner wasn't a priority. That was until one Saturday morning when Carmen showed up at my doorstep. Edith had invited her over to help with the kids. Carmen had a son just a week older than Adam. Her husband had died in a car accident when she was 5 months pregnant. She was 2 years older than me and worked in customer support for an insurance agency. It was clear to everyone that this was a setup, but I didn't object. While the kids slept, Carmen and I sat at the kitchen table and talked. I shared the story of my house arrest, and she told me about her late husband. Just as I was about to tell her about Bonnie, there was a knock on the front door. Bonnie, good to see you. The kids are asleep now. I assume the lady with you is overseeing today. Yes, this is Margot Hanson. I greeted Margot with a handshake before checking her credentials. Edith waved goodbye as she exited through the back door. I welcomed Margot and Bonnie inside. Bonnie, this is Carmen, a dear friend of mine. Her son, Chad, is asleep with Adam. Bonnie's gaze towards Carmen could have caused damage if it were possible. Carmen, however, maintained a wide smile and greeted Bonnie softly. Nice to meet you, Bonnie.
Bonnie roused the children while I escorted Carmen to the door. Would you like me to bring dinner tonight? After all, we're close friends. Without hesitation, I leaned in for a kiss, which was reciprocated. I'd love that. See you tonight. Bonnie observed closely as I interacted with Carmen. Everyone watched as Carmen waved from her car while driving off. 4 hours later, as Bonnie and Margot departed at the end of their scheduled visit, I found myself excited at the thought of having dinner with a woman for the first time in 6 months.
After feeding the kids and putting them down for a nap, I took a quick shower, shaved, and applied a touch of aftershave. I selected a nice shirt and clean pair of jeans. While I was changing Bevan's diaper, the doorbell rang. Carmen had changed clothes too. She assisted me with the hens while the boys were playing. The casserole she brought was enough to last me for several days. We conversed until nearly midnight, which I truly appreciated. Carmen wasn't merely a passive listener. She encouraged me to delve into the thoughts and emotions surrounding Bonnie's mistreatment of me. Convincing her of my innocence regarding the assaults required all my powers of persuasion. I'm unsure if she truly believes me, but it's the truth. Just before midnight, she hugged Chad, who was feeling sleepy, and left. I asked to see her again, and she said yes. Our goodnight kiss was much more passionate than the quick peck earlier. I used to think I didn't need a girlfriend, but I couldn't sleep all night, thinking about it again. Edith came early on Sunday, wanting to know how things went with Bonnie, but she quickly changed the subject to talk about Carmen. I didn't say much about how I felt. Right now, I don't think any woman would want a young dad with 4 kids to take care of, though I could be wrong. Carmen brings us dinner every Saturday. With 2 more months of being stuck at home, I don't have many options for fun, just watching TV or listening to music. When Carmen requested music, she pulled me up to dance. I struggled to prevent my arousal from showing. Unfortunately, she succeeded in provoking a reaction. Parker, I'm not prepared to dive into another relationship, but it's empowering to know I still captivate you. Can you handle taking things slow? Carmen, I believe so. My thoughts are jumbled. I'm unsure of what I want. Does that make sense? Completely. I can't fathom what you've been through, and I'm equally certain you can't understand my experiences. It will take time. Edith had entrusted me with looking after the kids during weekends. On Tuesday, she asked me to take a seat. Parker, I don't want to control your life. Well, maybe a bit. I had a chat with Carmen's mom last night. They reside on the East Coast. She mentioned that Carmen's car had broken down and she couldn't afford repairs. With rent and childcare expenses, she barely had a few $100 left each month. Do you think we could take care of Chad and save her the childcare costs? Adam and Chad seem to get along well. Mom, I believe it would be a thoughtful gesture from us, but I'd still need your assistance. How much does she need for the car repairs? I feel like I owe her for the casseroles she's been bringing over. Thank you, Parker. I'll find out about the car. The next morning, Carmen showed up at my doorstep. A lady sat in the driver's seat waving at me. Carmen had a sparkle in her eyes. Thanks, Parker. I really appreciate it. No worries, Carmen. I'll catch you later today. Fixing Carmen's car cost around $300. I thought it was a good thing to spend money on. Getting to see Carmen every day was a bonus. Now, when we said hello or goodbye, it felt like we were in love. Our hugs were much more intense. My house arrest had ended. I seized the chance to go for a 10-mile jog around the neighborhood. I casually mentioned an idea to Carmen. Could you possibly arrange to have Friday off? I'm thinking of planning a full-day date for us. Edith can look after the kids. I'd suggest this weekend, but both Edith and Julie have prior commitments. That sounds wonderful. I'll give you a call later today from the office. A few hours later, our date was set. My heart was racing with excitement. Friday couldn't have gone any smoother. On the day, I picked up Carmen and Chad early. After dropping Chad off at my place where Edith was looking after him, we headed to the marina. The 3-hour guided tour provided us with some much-needed intimate moments. With the amusement park now open, we spent the following 5 hours hopping from one queue to another. Eventually, it was time to head back. Parker, I'm tired of waiting for you to take the initiative. Can I stay over tonight? Let me think. How about staying for the weekend? The kiss confirmed that it was a yes. Once the kids were asleep, I pondered my next move. I didn't want to appear too eager, yet I also didn't want to seem disinterested. I made us drinks and then suggested, shall we watch some TV in the bedroom? I sensed that Carmen was wrestling with the same thoughts. We barely lasted a minute on the bed before getting swept up in a passionate kiss. Our actions felt instinctual. I squeezed her breast through her clothes, and she scratched at my zipper. Once we both admitted we wanted each other, we quickly took off our clothes. The light from the TV let us see each other's fit bodies. Because I don't eat well all the time, Carmen noticed my skinny chest. I wasn't exactly looking very strong at that moment. We kissed each other deeply, and I was almost at the peak of excitement. Carmen made me finish with her hand, and then I used my fingers to help her have an orgasm. We both agreed we need to get better at oral sex. I'm still using birth control. Are you sure you don't have any diseases? I got tested when we started everything, and all the results were negative. So yes, I believe so. I've never been tested, so you'll have to trust that I'm clean too, ready to take it all the way. Yes, I was more than ready multiple times over, and again after tending to the chickens. Saturday turned out to be the best day I'd had in a year. We made love while the kids were asleep. With a shortage of car seats, we opted for delivery from an Italian restaurant. Our nightcap took a slightly different turn as we each endeavored to improve our oral skills. Although I didn't climax in her mouth, Carmen's efforts were successful. It was clear that my oral skills needed the most work. Despite Carmen's intense arousal, I only managed to elicit a few tremors. While we were giving lunch to the children, Carmen's phone rang. It was her mother calling. She answered the call in the living room away from the bustling kitchen. When she returned, her complexion was pale. I need to go to my mom. My father had a heart attack and is on life support. Can you gather Chad's things? I'll be arranging travel. What can you say in such a situation? I expressed my condolences. I assured her of my support. I shed a tear with her. I believe I was crying as much for her pain as I was for the loss of her presence. She was at the airport in less than 90 minutes. I suppose I was uncertain about where I stood. Our relationship was casual friends with benefits. But was there more to it than that? A couple of nights and a day of intimacy doesn't necessarily imply anything deeper. Yet I couldn't deny my feelings for Carmen went beyond mere friendship. Did she feel the same way? Or was I just hoping she did? We needed to have a conversation. Carmen called late in the day. Her flight was on schedule, and she comforted her mother while her father fought for his life. It wasn't the right time to discuss our relationship. Her father survived, albeit in a diminished state. Brain damage from lack of oxygen left him unable to care for himself. Communication with Carmen became sparse. I left messages, and she left messages too. It seemed like I got my answer. Edith and Julie saw that I was feeling down and started trying to set me up with people again. Since I didn't have any restrictions anymore, the dates I went on were more normal. I made sure to tell people right away that I have 4 young kids. Just like I expected, there weren't many chances for me to date. My relationship with Carmen ended when she sent me a 2-page letter. Her dad died, so she decided to stay on the East Coast. She valued the time we spent together and wished me luck in finding someone new. It's done. I won't deny that. I traded in my sedan for an SUV to accommodate 4 car seats and another adult. The grocery store cashiers looked out for me, ensuring I didn't purchase anything unsuitable for my quartet. I remain hopeful that I'll find love again. Believing otherwise is too disheartening. A year after Carmen departed, Edith found me alone. Parker, I got word from Carmen's mom. Edith seemed unsure of my reaction. How are they? Seems someone misses you, hoping she hadn't burned bridges. I've always liked Carmen's mom. What's her name again? Chuckling, Edith replied. Parker, you know who I mean. If you're asking if I'd welcome her back without hesitation. 3 days later, my heart skipped a beat when I found Carmen waiting for me at home after work. Chad and Adam were fine sharing a room, and so were Carmen and I. With the assistance of all the grandparents, we are successfully raising 5 wonderful children. We attempt to manage on Carmen and my incomes alone, but the grandparents tend to spoil the kids with purchases that exceed our budget. Bonnie remarried about a year after the divorce was finalized. Although she still visits, she is significantly behind on her child support payments. To the kids, she's more like a sporadic visitor than a mother figure. They see Nana Edith as their primary maternal figure. Carmen and I opted for a simple courthouse wedding. Neither of us has any desire for more children. 5 is plenty. No charges were ever brought against anyone for the assaults on Bonnie or her partners. Bonnie and her parents remain estranged. However, I continue to regard Edith and Roger as the loving grandparents they are. At Christmas, 3.5 years after Bonnie left, I was in the kitchen with Edith. I asked her about the 2 rings she had on. She spun the one on her ring finger and then the one on her pinky. This one is my wedding ring, she said, pointing to the one on her ring finger, and this one belonged to my mom. I was surprised by what she told me. Then she put her finger to her lips and whispered, making a secret gesture. Second story, her husband shows up. I 28'em, single, have a friend 26F. Married that I've known since we were kids. Never have we had an encounter that made us anything other than friends. Until a few months ago. She and I have always gotten along really well. We share the same morals and ideas, just gravitated towards each other. Well, one night she opened up over text and told me that her husband asked her to have sex with other men. She says that afterwards, their relationship and sex are good for a couple of weeks before she does it again to make things better. It seems to be a cycle. One night, we bumped into each other at a bar, and she asked if I'd be willing to be one of her side pieces for this game. I said no, because I didn't want things to get weird between us, and because it's wrong to get involved with someone who's married. But after a few more drinks, my man brain took over, and I ended up taking her home. Her story checks out. Her husband was texting her while we were at the bar, asking if she was going to sleep with me and what she thought of me. She even took videos of herself performing some acts and sent them to her husband. He was very clearly into it. I even checked the number in her phone, and it matched his number on Facebook. It's hard to believe that this guy wants other men to use his wife, especially since she's the hottest woman I know. But it's true. They do this, and he's into it. But wait, there's more. Thursday night, she texts me to come up to the bar to play pool with our friend group. I get there, and it's only married couples. I know very few of the people there, none of them closely. We play pool for a few hours. As we leave, the bartender is saying bye to everyone and says to me, "Bye, my friend's name's hubby." I looked at her and she just kept her head down, pretending she didn't hear it. We sat in my truck for a while talking about random innocent things. Then, husband pulls into the parking lot. I know him through the grapevine and know what he drives. I go, "Is that his name?" She says, "Fuck," and ducks her head under the dashboard. Now, keep in mind the bar has been closed for an hour by this point. There are 4 vehicles in the parking lot. Hers, mine that we are both in, another random vehicle, and her husband's. She yells at me, "Go." Now, I understand that I shouldn't have left with his wife in my truck. I should have stayed and handled it there. There's no way he didn't know what was going on. A truck leaves as soon as he pulls in. Come on, any man can put this puzzle together. In my defense, she is the perfect example of a Texas woman. Tiny, rocking body, long platinum blonde hair. Plenty of men in Texas would shoot someone over her, and the last thing I wanted was to have a shootout in West Texas like John Wayne. Whatever was going on, I didn't want a part of. So we're flying down the road. She's freaking out. He's calling her frantically. She puts her phone into airplane mode. She grabs my arm with both hands, put her face against my arm, and says, "What the hell are we going to do?" I looked at her and said, "We. If I ain't bringing you back to your car, I'm bringing you home. This NASCAR Bonnie and Clyde shit ain't for me. We sure ain't going back to my house." So I drive clear across town to their house, anticipating that Hubs is going to be there. Well, he isn't. She gets her purse, grabs my face and kisses me, says,